Hello and welcome to distance learning today. We are going to be reviewing the compound inequalities for the test that we will be taking tomorrow. So we're going to review the ands and the ors and the word problems. All right, first one, write a compound inequality for each problem. Graph the solutions. The human ear can distinguish sounds between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz inclusive. Okay, inclusive. That means we are going to be including. I, for some reason, like to start with my graph. And so my graph, if I put on my number line 0, and then I need the two numbers from the problem, 20 and 20,000. And it says it's going to be inclusive. So we are including all of the numbers between these two. And with it being inclusive, that means we're going to include it. So we are going to have closed shaded circles in here. So we are going to shade these in. They are closed circles. Okay, now I like to write my compound inequality. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and write the compound inequality. So when it is shaded between like this, then that means we're going to have x is between two numbers. And you take the numbers right from the number line. So here's the 20 and the 20,000. And then double check to make sure if this is shaded in, then we have the line underneath it. And both of them are shaded in. So they both need the lines underneath here. So here is writing the compound inequality and graphing it. Number 2 says here, solve each compound inequality and then graph the solutions. Okay, the first thing I notice in this problem is this word or. And when I see or and I think of my graph, I think of two things that are going to be going out. So I know in my mind, this is what I'm going to need at the end. Okay, I'm going to put my line down here and solve this first one. So I need to get s by itself. So the first thing I need to do is subtract 3 from both sides. So I have 2s, no flipping because all I did was subtract is 4. Now I'm going to divide by this number 2. And again, I am not going to flip my inequality sign because I divided by a positive number. No flipping. So now I'm just going to go down here, start my number line. I have the number 0. Then I put 2 because that's the solution I just got. And this says less than or equal to with that line underneath. We know that we are going to have this colored in or shaded. And now if we read this, it says any number less than. So less than 2 is going to go this way. All right, looking at the second one over here, we have 3s plus 5 is greater than 26. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I get 3s is greater than, and 26 minus 5 is 21. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So those cancel. S, no flipping because we divided by a positive number. And we get 7. So at 7, it says greater than. There is no equal sign underneath it. So I'm going to have an open circle at 7. And then I'm going to shade to the right. Any number greater than 7. Number 3 wants us to write this compound inequality. Well, if we look at this, the shading is going this way. And the shading is going this way. So it's going out. So that means I'm going to have an or problem. And every time I write these, I always like to write my x first, then my symbol, then my number. So what my first number here that I have is a -3. And if we look from 3, my numbers are getting smaller, 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 smaller. So you can see that this symbol, this arrow that I drew in, because I'm writing the left letter first, and I'm going less than, that arrow is going this way, and it's an open circle, so no line underneath. Okay, same thing on the other side. I like to always write my letter first, and then the number that we have down here is a 3. And if we look, this arrow over here is going to the right. Bigger than. Numbers are getting bigger, 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 bigger. And if you look back here, this is colored in. It is shaded in. And if that dot is shaded in, then we're going to put the line underneath it. So any number less than -3 or any number greater than a +3. All right, again, writing the compound inequality. And if you look here, it's shaded between two numbers. That means it's an and problem. And I like to write my and problems so that I have my x between. I take that first number, put it in, my second number. Now the next thing I need to go check is, are my circles open or closed? So you look here at 0, and this is shaded in. And because that 0 is shaded in, we need to put the line underneath it. But if you look at 20, that's an open circle. So we have it written like just less than, no symbol underneath it. Now, if you wanted to, you could write it with the word and between here. So remember, I like to write my letter first. And if you look at this, and I have my 0, I'm talking about any number bigger than or equal to 0. Okay, and if we look at the 20, so we have the x and then the 20, always make sure you write that letter first so we get this right. So from the 20, the numbers are getting smaller, 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 and so we're going to put less than in there. So either way is acceptable. Number 5, solving this compound. So it looks like I'm going to draw a line here and a line here. So remember, you have to put something in all 3 places. Okay, so what am I going to do here? What is by the x that I need to move? This says -8, so the inverse operation is a +8. And make sure you put it in all 3 spots. Now remember, you should be using your calculator so that you get these numbers correct. So -15 plus 8 is a -7. No flipping, because all we did was move a number by adding. No flipping. -4 plus 8 is a +4. Okay, this is an and problem. So we should know from the and problem that we're going to be shading between. So let's look here at this symbol right here. X is, there's no line underneath it. So at -7, it's open. But if you look at the 4, there's the line underneath it. So we know this needs to be closed. And because this is an and problem, this X is between, we are going to shade everything in between. Now, some of you might be doing this. -7 open goes to the right, and 4 closed and shade to the left. That is perfectly fine. And then we still shade between. All right, last problem of the review here. Again, we have an and problem. When that says and, we should know that our graph is going to be shading between. So in this problem right here, I want to get x all by itself. So I'm going to subtract 7. Please use your calculator to do -7 minus 2 is a -9. We subtracted, so I am not going to flip my sign. And I have a 3x. Now this number that's in front of the 3, so we're going to divide both sides by 3. -9 divided by 3 is a -3. We divided by a positive number, so do not flip your sign. Now, if I'm going to graph this, I have 0 on my number line and -3. Now remember, I always want you to write that letter first. See how it says -3 first? Well, sometimes we get this wrong when we graph it, so I want to put the x first. The big end, open end, is toward the x, and then the -3. All right, now let's graph it. Open or closed circle, and it's going to be open because there's no line underneath it. And now look at it. Any number greater than, and greater than goes this way. All right, second problem over here. So now we've got a -5 by the x. So that says -5 times x. The opposite of times, we are going to divide by a -5. So here our -5's cancel out, and I divided by a negative number. Anytime you divide by a negative, you must flip that sign. And a -30 divided by a -5 is a +6. So now graphing it, going down to my number line, on 6, it's a open circle because we don't have any line underneath it. It's not equal to. And the letter is first, so we're ready to go. And that says any number less than 6. Well, less than 6 goes this way. And anytime we have those two arrows going between, we are going to shade. Now, that graph looks very similar to the very first thing that I thought was shading between, and that's what we ended up doing here. So anytime we have an and, we shade between. Your assignment is on Schoology, so it's the quiz homework assignment, and we have compound inequalities, so it's a review on compound inequalities, and we are going to have your test tomorrow on your compound inequalities. Test is tomorrow. I guess it's not the 4th already. Did I skip an extra week in here? It's only the 27th. Wow, I'm off a week here. 27th. And we're still in April. Okay, so it's going to be April 27th. Test is tomorrow on your compound inequalities.